Hello everyone, this is Erica May Bacorio and together with my partner, Miss Mary Grace Sarah Bossing, today we will be tackling the humanistic psychoanalysis theory of um, Erich Fromm. Before anything else, let us first talk about the overview of humanistic psychoanalysis theory. So, Erich Fromm's basic thesis is that modern day people have been torn away from their prehistoric union with nature and also with one another, yet they have the power of reasoning, foresight, and imagination. This combination of lack of animal instincts and presence of rational thought makes humans the freaks of the universe. Self awareness contributes to feelings of loneliness, isolation, and homelessness. So, to escape from these feelings, people strive to become reunited with nature and with their fellow human beings. So, aside from it, trained in Freudian psychoanalysis and influenced by Karl Marx, Karen Horney, and other socially oriented theorists, Fromm developed a theory of personality that emphasizes the influence of social biological factors, history, economics, and class structure. So, his humanistic psychoanalysis assumes that humanity's separation from the natural world has produced feelings of loneliness and isolation, a condition called basic anxiety. Fromm was more than a personality theorist. He was a social critic, psychotherapist, philosopher, biblical scholar, cultural anthropologist, and psychobiographer. His humanistic psychoanalysis looks at people from a historical and cultural perspective rather than a strictly psychological one. It is less concerned with the individual and more concerned with those characteristics common to a culture. So Fromm takes an evolutionary view of humanity. When humans emerged as a separate species in animal evolution, they lost most of their animal instincts but gained an increase in brain development that permitted self-awareness, imagination, planning, and doubt. So, this combination of weak instincts and a highly developed brain makes humans distinct from all the other animals. In addition, a more recent event in human history has been the rise of capitalism, which on one hand has contributed to the growth of leisure time and personal freedom, but on the other hand, it has resulted in feelings of anxiety, isolation, and powerlessness. The cost of freedom from maintained has exceeded in its benefits. So the isolation wrought by capitalism has been unbearable, leaving people with two alternatives. First is to escape from freedom into interpersonal dependencies, and second is to move to self-realization through productive love and work. So let us proceed to the biography of Erich Fromm. He was born on March 23, 1900 in Frankfurt, Germany. He was the only child of middle-class Orthodox Jewish parents. His father, Naphtali Fromm, the son of a rabbi and the grandson of two rabbis. His mother, Rosa Cross Fromm, was the niece of Ludwig Cross, a well-known Talmudic scholar. He grew up into two very distinct worlds, one the traditional Orthodox Jewish world, and the other one is a modern capitalist world. Fromm became a socialist after the World War I and he refuses to join the Socialist Party. He studied psychology, philosophy, and sociology at the University of Heidelberg, when, where he received his Doctor of Philosophy degree in sociology at either age of 22 or 25. From 1925 until 1930, he studied psychoanalysis first in Munich, then in Frankfurt, and finally at the Berlin Psychoanalytic Institute. In 1926, the same year that he repudiated um, Orthodox Judaism, Fromm married Frieda Richman, his analyst, who was more than 10 years his senior. But sadly, they separated in 1930 but were not divorced until much later. after both had immigrated to the United States. 30, Fromm and several others founded the South German Institute for Psychoanalysis in Frankfurt, but apparently he moved to Switzerland, where he joined the newly founded International Institute of Social Research in Geneva. In 1933, he accepted an invitation to deliver a series of lectures at the Chicago Psychoanalytic Institute. The following year, he immigrated to the United States and opened a private practice in New York City. In 1944, Fromm married Henny Garland, a woman 2 years younger than Fromm and whose interest in religion and mystical thought furthered Fromm's own inclinations towards Zen Buddhism. And in 1951, he and his wife moved to Mexico for a more favorable climate for Garland, who suffered from rheumatoid arthritis. Fromm joined the faculty at the National Autonomous University in Mexico City. He established a psychoanalytic department at the medical school. After his wife died in 1952, he continued to live in Mexico and commuted between his home in Cuernavaca and the United States, where he held various academic positions, including professor of psychology at Michigan State University from 1957 to 1961 and adjunct professor at New York University from 1962 to 1970. In 1953, he met Annis Freeman, whom he married again. In 1968, Fromm suffered a serious heart attack and was forced to slow down his busy schedule. In 1974, and still ill, he and his wife moved to Moralto, Switzerland, where he died March 18, 1980, a few days short of his 80th birthday. Fromm also began his professional career as a psychotherapist using orthodox psychoanalytic technique. Among his best-known books are The Escape from Freedom, Man for Himself, Psychoanalysis and Religion, The Sane Society, The Art of Loving, Marx's Concept of Man, The Heart of the Man, The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness, To Have or Be, and For the Love of My Life. Next would be the Fromm's basic assumptions. So Fromm's most basic assumption is that individual personality can be understood only in the light of human history. So according to him, the discussion of the human situation must precede that of personality, and psychology must be based on anthropologic philosophical concept of human existence. So Fromm believed that humans, unlike other animals, have been turned away from their prehistoric union with nature. They have no powerful instincts to adapt to a changing world. Instead, they have acquired the facility to reason, a condition Fromm called the human dilemma. People experience this basic dilemma because they have become separate from nature and yet have the capacity to be aware of themselves as isolated beings. So the human ability to reason, therefore, is both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it permits people to survive, but on the other, it forces them to attempt to solve basic insurable dichotomies. Fromm referred to these as existential dichotomies because they are rooted in people's very existence. Humans cannot do away with these existential dichotomies. They can only react to these dichotomies relative to their culture and their individual personalities. So the first and foremost fundamental dichotomy is that between life and death. So self-awareness and reason tells us that we will die, but we try to negate this dichotomy by postulating life after death, an attempt that does not alter the fact that our lives ends with death. A second existential dichotomy is the humans are capable of conceptualizing the goal of complete self-realization, but we also are aware that life is too short to reach that goal. Only if the lifespan of the individual were identical with that of mankind could he or she separate in the human development, which occurs in the historical process. That's from according to Fromm. So some people try to solve this dichotomy by assuming that their own historical period is the crowning achievement of humanity, while others postulate a continuation of development after death. So the third and the last existential dichotomy is that people are ultimately alone, yet we cannot tolerate isolation. They are aware of themselves as separate individuals, and at the same time, they believe that their happiness depends on uniting with their fellow human beings. Although people cannot completely solve the problem of aloneness versus union, they must make an attempt or run the risk of insanity. From proposed human needs, so as animals, humans are motivated by such physiological needs as hunger, sex, and safety. But they can never solve their human dilemma by satisfying these animal needs. Only the distinctive human needs can move people toward a union with the natural world. These existential needs have emerged during the evolution of human culture, growing out of their attempts to find an answer to their existence and to avoid becoming insane. Indeed, Fromm contended that one important difference between mentally healthy individuals and neurotic or insane ones is that healthy people find answers to their existence, answers that more completely correspond to their total human needs. In other words, healthy individuals are better able to find ways of reuniting to the world by productively solving the human needs of relatedness, transcendence, rootedness, a sense of identity, and a frame of orientation. Relatedness, so this is the first human or existential need, is relatedness, the drive for union with another person or other persons. So Fromm postulated three basic ways in which a person may relate to the world. First is the submission, second is the power, and three is love. A person can submit to another, to a group, to an institution in order to become one with the world. In this way, he transcends the separateness of his individual existence by becoming part of somebody or something bigger than himself and experiences his identity in connection with the power to which he submitted. That was Fromm believed. Whereas submissive people search for a relationship with domineering people, power seekers welcome submissive partners. When a submissive person and a domineering person find each other, they frequently establish a symbiotic relationship, one that is satisfying to both partners. Although such a symbiosis may be gratifying, it blocks growth toward integrity and psychological health. The two partners live on each other and from each other, satisfying their craving for closeness, yet suffering from the lack of inner strength and self-reliance, which would require freedom and independence. People in symbiotic relationship are drawn to one another not by love but by a desperate need for relatedness, a need that can never be completely satisfied by such a partnership. Underlying the union are unconscious feelings of hostility. People in symbiotic relationship blame their partners for not being able to completely satisfy their needs. They find themselves seeking additional submission or power, and as a result, they become more and more dependent on their partners and less of an individual. So Fromm believed that love is the only route by which a person can become united with the world and, at the same time, achieve individuality and integrity. He defined love as a union with somebody or something outside oneself under the condition of retaining the separateness and integrity of one's own self. According to Fromm, love involves sharing and communication with another, yet it allows as a person the freedom to be unique and separate. It enables a person to satisfy the need for relatedness without surrendering integrity and independence. In love, two people become one yet remain two. In the art of loving, from the previous books of Fromm, it identified care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge as four basic elements common to all forms of genuine love. Someone who loves another person must care for that person and would be willing to take care of him or her. Love also means responsibility, that is, willingness and ability to respond. A person who loves others responds to their physical and psychological needs, respects for them who they are, and avoids the temptation of trying to change them. But people can respect others only if they have knowledge of them. To know others means to see them from their own point of view. Thus, care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge are all entwined in love relationship, and that's according to Fromm. So next would be the transcendence. So like other animals, humans are thrown into the world without their consent or will and then removed from it, again without their consent or will. But unlike other animals, human beings are driven by the need for transcendence. It is defined as the urge to rise above a passive and accidental existence and into the realm of purposefulness and freedom. It's according to Fromm. Just as relatedness can be pursued through either productive or non-productive methods, transcendence can be sought through either positive or negative approaches. So people can transcend their passive nature by either creating life or destroying it. Although other animals can create life through reproduction, only humans are aware of themselves as creators. Also, humans can be creative in other ways. They can create art, religious ideas, laws, material production, and even love. To create means to be active and to care about that we create, but we can also transcend life by destroying it and thus rising above our slain victims. In The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness by Fromm, he argued there that humans are the only species to use malignant aggression. So, malignant aggression, that is, to kill for reasons other than survival. Although malignant aggression is dominant and powerful passion in some individuals and cultures, well, it is not common to all humans. It apparently was unknown to many prehistoric societies as well as some contemporary primitive societies. So the third existential need is for rootedness, or the need to establish roots or to feel at home again in the world. So when humans are evolved as a separate species, they lost their home in natural world. At the same time, their capacity for thought enabled them to realize that they were without a home, without roots. So the consequent feelings of isolation and helplessness became unbearable. So rootedness too can be sought in either productive or non-productive strategies. With the productive strategy, people are weaned from the orbit of their mother and became fully born. That is, they actively and creatively relate to the world and became a whole or integrated. This new tie is to the natural world confers security and reestablishes a sense of belongingness and rootedness. However, people may also seek rootedness through the non-productive strategy of fixation. A tenacious reluctance to move beyond the protective security provided by one's mother. People who strive for rootedness through fixation are afraid to take the next step of birth, to be weaned from the mother's breast. So they have a deep craving to be mothered, nursed, protected by a motherly figure. They are externally dependent ones who are frightened and insecure when motherly protection is withdrawn. That is stated by Fromm. So, according to him, rootedness can also be seen phylogenetically in the evolution of the human species. So, Fromm agreed with Freud that incestuous desires are universal, but he agreed with Freud's belief that they are essentially sexual. So, according to Fromm, incestuous feelings are based in the deep seated craving to remain in or to return to the all enveloping womb or to the all nourishing breast. Fromm was influenced by Johann Jacob Bachofen's his ideas on early matriarch- matriarchal societies. So, unlike Freud, he believed that early societies were patriarchal, but Bachofen held that the mother was the central figure in this ancient social group. So it was she who provided roots for her children and motivated them either to develop their individuality and reason or to become fixated and incapable of psychological growth. So Fromm's strong preference of Bachofen's mother-centered theory of the Oedipal situation over Freud's father-centered conception is consistent with his preference from older women. Fromm's first wife was Frida Fromm Richman, and that was more than 10 years older than Fromm, and his longtime lover, Karen Horney, was 15 years his senior. Fromm's conception of Oedipus complex is as a desire to return to the mother's womb or breast or to a person's with mothering function should be viewed in the light of his attraction to older women. So the next one is the sense of identity. This is the fourth human need, um, or the capacity to be aware of ourselves as a separate entity. Because we have been turned away from nature, we need to form a concept of ourselves to be able to say, I am I, or I am the subject of my actions. So, Fromm believed that primitive people identified more closely with their clan and did not see themselves as individuals existing apart from the group. So, even during medieval times, people were identified largely by their social role in the feudal hierarchy. So, in agreement with Marx, Fromm believed that the rise of capitalism has given people more economic and political freedom. However, this freedom was given only in a minority of people a true sense of I. The identity of most people still resides in their attachment to others or to institutions such as nation, religion, occupation, or social group. Instead of pre-individualistic clan identity, a newly herd identity develops in which the sense of identity rests on the sense of unquestionable belonging to the crowd. So that is uniformity and conformity are often recognized as such and are covered by illusion of individuality does not alter the facts. So without a sense of identity, according to Fromm, people could not retain their sanity, and this threat provides a powerful motivation to do almost anything to acquire a sense of identity. So neurotics try to attach themselves to powerful people or to social or should I say political institutions. Healthy people, however, have less need to conform to the herd, less need to give up the sense of self. So they do not have to surrender their freedom and individuality in order to fit into society because they possess an authentic sense of identity. So, the last and not the least, the frame of orientation. So, this is the final human need. Being split off from nature, humans need a roadmap, a frame of orientation to make their way through the world. Without such a map, humans would be confused and unable to act purposefully and consistently. Fromm stated, a frame of orientation enables people to organize the various stimuli that impinge on them. So, people who possess a solid frame of orientation can make sense of these events and phenomena, but those who lack a reliable frame of orientation will nevertheless strive to put these events into some sort of framework in order to make sense of them. For example, an American with a shaky frame of orientation and a poor understanding of history may attempt to understand the events of um, September 11, 2001 by blaming them on evil or bad people. Every person has a philosophy and a consistent way of looking at things. Many people take for granted this philosophy or frame reference so that anything at odds with their view is judged as crazy or unreasonable. Anything consistent with it is seen simply as common sense. People will do nearly anything to just acquire and retain a frame of orientation, even to the extreme of following irrational and bizarre philosophies, such as espoused, espoused by fanatical political and religious leaders. So, a roadmap without a goal or destination is worthless. Humans have mental capacity to imagine many alternative paths to follow. So, to keep from going insane, however, they need a final goal or object devotion. So, according to this goal is or object of devotion focuses people's energies in single direction. It enables us to transcend our isolated existence and confers meaning to their lives. So the summary of um, human needs. In addition to psychological or animal needs, people are motivated by five distinctively human needs, which is um, the relatedness, transcendence, rootedness, a sense of identity, and a frame of orientation. So those needs have evolved from human existence as a separate species and are aimed moving people toward a union with the natural world. So Fromm believed that lack of satisfaction of any of these needs is unbearable and results in insanity. Thus, people with strong driven to fulfill them in some way or other, either positively or negatively. So, um, as a whole, in the summary of human needs, it shows the relatedness that can be satisfied through submission, um, domination, or love, but only love produces authentic fulfillment. So, on the other hand, transcendence can be um, satisfied by either destructiveness or creativeness, but only the latter permits joy. Rootedness can be satisfied either by fixation to the mother or by moving forward into full birth and wholeness. Next is the sense of identity can be based on adjustment to the group, or it can be satisfied through creative movement toward individuality. And a frame of orientation may be either irrational or rational, but only a rational philosophy can serve as a basis for growth of total personality, and that is according to Fromm. So let's jump into the burden of freedom. So the central thesis of Fromm's writing is that humans have been torn from nature, yet they remain part of the natural world, subject to the same physical limitations as other animals. As the only animal possessing self-awareness, imagination, and um, reasons. Humans are the freaks of the universe, according to Fromm. Reason is both a curse and a blessing. It is responsible for feelings of isolation and loneliness, but it is also the process that enables humans to become reunited with the world. So historically, as people gain more and more economic and political freedom, they came to feel increasingly more isolated. For example, during the Middle Ages, people had relatively little personal freedom. They were anchored to prescribed rules in society, rules that provided security, dependability, and certainty. Then, as they acquired more freedom to move both socially and geographically, they found that um, they acquired more freedom to move both socially and geographically. They were free from the security of a fixed position in the world. They were no longer tied to the one geographic region, one social order, or one occupation. They become separated from their roots and isolated from one another. So a parallel experience exists on a personal level. As children became more independent of their mothers, they gained more freedom to express their individuality, to move around unsupervised, to choose their friends, clothes, and so on. At the same time, they experience the burden of freedom, that is, they are free from the security of being one with mother. On both a social and individual level, this burden of freedom results in basic anxiety, the feeling of being alone in the world. So, the mechanism of escape, because basic anxiety produces a frightening sense of isolation and aloneness, people attempt to flee from freedom through a variety of escape mechanisms. So, in escape from freedom, Fromm identified three primary mechanisms of escape. First is the um, authoritarianism, destructiveness, and the conformity. So, unlike Horney's neurotic trends from the previous lesson, unlike from Horney's neurotic trends, Fromm's mechanism of escape are driving forces in normal people, kumbaga. So, both individually and collectively. So, the first one is the authoritarianism. So, Fromm defined authoritarianism as the tendency to give up the independence of one's own individual self and to fuse oneself with somebody or something outside oneself. So, in order to acquire the strength which the individual is lacking. This need to unite with a powerful partner can take one of two forms: masochism or sadism. So, masochism results from basic feelings or powerlessness, weakness, and inferiority, and is aimed at joining the self to a more powerful person or institution. So, masochistic strivings often are distinguished as love or loyalty, but unlike love and loyalty, they can never contribute positively to independence and authenticity. So, compared with masochism, sadism is more neurotic and more socially harmful. Like masochism, sadism is aimed at reducing basic anxiety through achieving unity with another person or persons. So, Fromm identified three kinds of sadism, sadistic tendencies, all, all more or less clustered together. So the first is the need to make others dependent on oneself and to gain power over those who are weak. The second one is the compulsion to exploit others, to take advantage of them, and to use them for one's benefits or pleasure. And the third sadistic tendency is the desire to see others suffer, either physically or psychologically. Next is the destructiveness. So, like authoritarianism, destructiveness is rooted in the feelings of loneliness, isolation, and powerlessness. So, unlike sadism and masochism, however, destructiveness does not depend on a continuous relationship with another person. Rather, it seeks to do away with other people. So, both individuals and nations can employ destructiveness as a mechanism of escape by destroying people and objects. A person or a nation attempts to restore lost feelings or power. However, by destroying other persons or nations, destructive people eliminate much of the outside world and thus acquire a type of perverted isolation. Next is the conformity. So, this is a third means of escape. People who conform to try to escape from a sense of aloneness and isolation by giving up their individuality and becoming whatever other people desire them to be. Thus, they become like robots, reacting predictably and mechanically to the whims of others. They seldom express their own opinion, cling to expected standards of behavior, and often appear stiff and automated. So people in the modern world are free from many external bonds and are free to act according to their own will. But at the same time, they do not know what they want to think or they want or they feel. They conform like automatons to an anonymous authority and adapt a self that is not authentic. Kibali fake lang siya. So, the more they conform, the more powerless they feel. The more power, powerless they feel, the more they must conform. So, people can break this cycle in conformity and powerlessness only by achieving self realization or post positive freedom. That's according to Fromm. Next is we will be indulging also the positive freedom. So, the emerge of political and economic freedom does not lead inevitably to the bondage of isolation and powerlessness, but a person can be free and not alone, critical and yet not filled with doubts, independent and yet an integral part of mankind. From stated, people can attain this kind of freedom called positive freedom by spontaneous and full expression of both their rational and their emotional potentialities. So, spontaneous activities such as frequent seen in small children and in artists who are little no tendency to conform to whatever others want them to be. They act according to their basic natures and not according to conventional rules. So positive freedom represents a successful solution to the human dilemma of being part of the natural world and yet separate from it. So through positive freedom and spontaneous activity, people overcome the terror of aloneness, achieve union with the world, and maintain individuality. Fromm held that love and work are the twin components of positive freedom. Through active love and work, humans unite with one another and with the world without sacrificing their integrity. They affirm their uniqueness as individuals and achieve full realization of their potentialities. So, I think that would be all for my part. The continuation of our report would be discussed by Miss Mary Grace. I hope you learned something. Thank you.